first. Now, from increasing inflation to a stable exchange rate, many experts have preferred starting point for Yemi Cardoso to begin his tenure as the new Central Bank of Nigeria's governor. A few days ago, President Bola Tinubu has appointed Yemi Cardoso as the new CBN governor, along with 4 new deputy governors to assist him. They are Mohammed Dattijo, Emem Nnan Usoro, Ikeazor, and Bala Bello. After years of anticipating a better financial structure in the country, many are hoping that these newly appointed leaders will positively shape Nigeria's economic future. Now, joining me in the studio is a financial expert, Sheson Okwade, and a lawyer and policy analyst, Ayodele Oni. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being on the show this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Now, let me start with the opening remark with you, Sheson Okwade. You know, we saw what happened to the erstwhile CBN governor, although we're not sure whether he has resigned, even though some reports are saying that he has resigned or not. But then, what do you make of this nomination of Cardoso?
First and foremost, Yemi Cardoso nomination to me attract good and positive way of doing things, looking at his antecedents in time past. If you look at his credentials, he has worked in the financial sector. One time managing director of Citibank, which is handling the Nigerian aspect of it, a commissioner of budget and planning, and coming in as governor of CBN gives me a synergy that occurred between him while he was commissioner in Lagos with Wale Edo, knowing fully well that the economy of every nation resides in both monetary and fiscal policy. And the monetary policy has to do with things surrounding CBN, being managed by CBN, and the fiscal policy that talks about government spending, taxation, reside with the Minister of Finance. And both needs to work to synergize to actually make the country move forward. If you look at the last administration, there are fantastic policies raised by them, but the disunity between the two arms created more problems in area of resolving the problems that can allow the economy to grow. If you look at the aspect of money supply, the last CBN governor tried to see way of mopping up funds, but you ask yourself the question, was that channel in the proper way? Did we carry out due diligence to know whether the financial institutions that they manage are actually prepared for those kind of a thing? Because it's the responsibility of CBN to manage the money supply in circulation. So you discover that a good policy, wrong timing and wrong implementation, because after carrying out the stress test on so many banks, we discovered that the pressure they put on them, they could not manage it, and that was what led to scarcity of money then that brought up, increase in cost of so many things. So for me, appointment of Yemi Cardoso with his previous achievements, both in the private and public sector, would definitely, give room for more growth. It's a very daunting task, I must say, because at this point, we're talking of foreign exchange that is huge. Our naira is weak. Inflation rate is on the high side. The money supply, do we have the infrastructure? People like us have come to say, can we, one way or the other, reduce the pressure that we have on the high bills? In US, you go there and what you say is the maximum is $100. Why is it that they've not had $1,000? Right. In such a way that every transactions can go through the channels that is expected of them. And these are part of the problem that I feel the the incoming CBN governor and his team needs to look at, work on them. The bank needs to actually be visited on the infrastructure that they provided. The last administration, what they did has actually pointed few elites to the area of doing what is needful, but we need more financial inclusion. The advent of e-Naira. Where are we talking of it today? It's still not being used. And how can we work with the Ministry of Finance in making sure that MDAs, majority still make use of payment of cash here and there. How can they use some of the platform that is being provided by the arm of the monetary and which is CBN to enhance reducing, that we have on board? And on that note, that will reduce corruption, because you can now have an audit trail, of activities that goes on. It gives easy landing for those in fiscal policy to trace how we tax you. Because when you are able to have those documentation, through the bank, we get your statement, we have those track, and we'll be able to move on. The synergy at this time between the Ministry of Finance and the CBN is going to assist a great way to make the economy grow. Right,
you've really set the agenda, for us to, break down and, talk about issues that are really the CBN is facing, and of course Nigeria as a whole. But before I come to you, I think we're due for a commercial. We'll just quickly take a break, and then I'll get your opening remark and how you think the CBN can help, mitigate the impact of the fuel subsidy and all of that Nigerians are really looking forward to, solving. Just stay with us here on Breakfast Show. We'll take a break and be back. You're watching TVC Breakfast, and we've been talking about the new CBN governor that has been appointed by the president of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu. That's Yemi Cardoso, as a new CBN governor, along with 4 new deputy governors to assist him. And we've been analyzing what of the challenges, the tasks ahead of him, and some things to expect, in his governance of the Apex Bank. I've been speaking with financial expert Sheson Kwade, as well as a lawyer and policy analyst Ayodele Oni. Ayodele, let me take the conversation to you now. We looking at the CBN. A lot of Nigerians have been saying there is need to sanitize that system. So many things have gone wrong. But first and foremost, having Yemi Cardoso, some are saying, is it possible that he will be able to do this job? Because he was a former banker, but not an economist. But do you feel he's up to the task?
Okay, you know that when it comes to the central bank, it's about monetary policy. And he would work within the overall policy trust of the president. I understand that the president is pro-market. That's the first thing you need to take into consideration. And what he will be doing is monetary policy. And when you speak to monetary policy, you speak to availability, cost, volume of credit, and money in the economy. So it's not so much around necessarily being an economist. It's about understanding the policy trust of the federal government and being able to properly plug into that policy trust. That's different from fiscal policy, which is largely spending and taxation. And like he had said, you need to ensure that there's a synergy between fiscal policy and monetary policy. Because if you don't have that, then you'd work across purposes. You'd remember when the issue around change in the currency was on, the Minister of Finance did say she wasn't carried along. So he wouldn't succeed alone. He needs to work, 1, with his deputies, 2, within the overall policy trust of the federal government, and 3, he needs to work with someone I believe he does have a good working relationship with, which is Mr. Edu. So it's not about just being an economist. It's about your capacity to push through government policies, to understand. He's been in government, he's done financial stuff. So he should have sufficient knowledge to be able to know what policies would help. And when you even speak about monetary policy, broadly speaking, there are 2 types. There's expansionary and there's one that contracts. There's a contractionary, the economy. You need to first ask yourself, where's the economy and what then do you want to achieve? What you want to achieve will determine whether you will go expansionary, or you want to do a contractionary sort of monetary policy. And I think those are the more important issues around our external reserves. Those are foreign currency bonds, bullion, gold, whatever it is we have externally. You want to deal with inflation, what some people call the consumer price index, the CPI. You want to deal with inconsistency in policy. Now, I'll speak because I'm a lawyer. I know investors in this sort of market are concerned about 2 broad things. Do you have some form of certainty unlike where you have a CBN governor acting or in acting capacity. That's a challenge for investors. Secondly, you want to be sure of consistency of policies. Recall the previous administration, you had a lot of policy flip-flops. You had a lot of policy inconsistencies. They'll say A today, the next day, without, I think the problem also was, like I said, synergy. If you don't work together, someone's doing something, you're doing something else. At the end of the day, you may need to change what you're doing because it doesn't align with the overall goal of that government or what the economy or where the economy should be moving to. So I think those are broader issues and the experiences I had from doing policy and economic policy budgets and all of that. Remember, it was one of those who put together, I think it was the Lagos State 10-point economic agenda. Yeah, so those are
the chairman of Igbeti Summit.
Yes.
Which gives a good roadmap for Lagos today.
Those are more critical questions. There are a lot of bankers who didn't study banking, but you do get this with experience, with training. So I think that's not sufficient to say it.
Well, even though we've also had that a journalist, someone who had a journalist background, had been a CBN governor at a point in time. I forgot the name now. But then I'd like to ask you, it's one thing for the central bank, which is the apex bank, to bring up policies, monetary policies, issue directories for different banks and all of that. It's another thing for the banks, commercial banks themselves, to key into the policies of the CBN and carry out all these policies effectively, because they are the one that relate with the common man. At times, the CBN will issue regulation. They would issue directives, but the banks would do something else. We saw what happened during the Naira redesign, where too much inconsistencies. How do you think the commercial banks that we have this time round, today in Nigeria, they work hand in hand with the CBN, just like he's talked about the synergy?
Yeah, they work hand in hand. It's a function of the leader. When the leader is a bit loose, or there is what I call over-familiarity, it breeds a lot of lapses that we saw in the last administration. Sincerely speaking, part of the things I want to call CBN to is to give a feedback mechanism, not only from the banks, but also from the consumers, that we raised during the redesigning of the currency, that what the bankers are giving to the CBN seems not to be intended with what is obtainable, which is the reality. And you can only have this independent. There can be false whistleblowing, we know, but with proper investigation you can do it. So we want a situation which some of us have actually called for, that CBN needs to put in place a feedback mechanism that they monitor, continuously. And this will take us to the issue of foreign exchange. CBN has struggled one way or the other. And we've seen instances where the commercial banks, flout the rules for personal gains, affecting the business development, business owners. If you don't have high and mighty higher up there, it's become quite difficult for you to access. And don't forget that we rely so much on foreign exchange these days because we are not a production nation. Majority of the things we use this day are being imported. So every businessman wants to have access, to the foreign exchange. And that's the commercial bank said that to me as an opportunity to make themselves relevant. So CBN must come up, with stringent, with policies, and follow through. Monitor those policies in such a way that penalties should be given. And don't do this under the ground. Announce it. Let people know. When you flout the law and you punish the person, it serves as a deterrent to others to flout it. So, but situation where certain things happen and it looks as if, well, let it go. The other party will say, well, I will carry out mine. And that is injurious. It's actually affecting the economy on its own. So for me, I will continue to say that we have fantastic policy. We should consider our area of implementation. If we implement it rightly, at the right time, with the right idea, for the benefit of the citizen, definitely will grow. And let's have proper monitoring of things. What we lack is that we give out policy, we roll out idea, we roll out procedure, and we forget to monitor those things. And it's not only applicable to CBN. Even when contracts are being awarded, how much of it do we monitor to timeline?
There must be timeline, given to. And when there are reasons for you to shift grant, you must provide reasons. If the reasons are not justifiable, you penalize. Some of us are business owners. When you have contract with organization, they put the clause there. When you default in area of delivering to time, these are certain things that you pay. So when you understand those punishment or those penalty, and you see how weighty it can be, definitely you see some of the banks, falling in line with some of the directives that are coming from CBN. And that is the area where I feel that the incoming administration for CBN needs to work on with the commercial bank, because we need to work on this foreign exchange. Is really, really impacting on the citizen.
You talked about Yemi Cardoso as a perfect gentleman, sound, down to earth, but I'm not sure whether because if you look at the activities of the BDCs, the British operators, some say that what they are doing is, whatever it is that they do, they hurt the economy. And the banks also enable them to do some of the things that they do. How do you think it can resolve this issue so that we'll have Naira not being, not stumbling or tumbling against the dollar? So we'll have Naira at least, way below what we have now.
Okay. I'll start from leadership. I think that if the central banker does what's wrong, it's difficult for him to whip everyone else into place. And I'll give you an example. Look at this idea of the CBN being lender of last resort to the government and deficit financing. The ways and means, that's what they call it. It's capped at 5%, or until very recently where the National Assembly tried to move it to 15%. It was capped at 5%. But the previous central banker, the CBN governor, exceeded, the last administration exceeded the 5%. It's supposed to be 5% of the previous year's revenue. And they did exceed that substantially. That's what we got from the reports in the press. So if from your ways and means and those things that should be your own prudential rules, you are not guided by them, you flout it, it'll be more difficult for you to then tell the banks issues around their own prudential guidelines, single obligor, not round tripping. That's broadly speaking. Now, going back to that particular issue, I think we need to be careful when we speak about issues around currency and all of that. Things don't work in isolation. The economy isn't going to work in isolation.
That's right.
If we do not generate sufficient Forex, we will continue to, and I'll say a few things, we will continue to have pressure on the Naira, 1. 2, if you make laws, there's a BOFIA, Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act. If you have laws, and I always have this argument or conversation with my friends, particularly those who are not Nigerians, and Nigeria has some of the best laws in the world. The problem is implementation. The problem is favoritism. If someone does flout the law and say you are CBN governor, you used to be MD of that bank, and you look away, someone else is going to do it, and then give that person as an excuse. What then do you want to do? So that's another thing you need to take into consideration. One other thing you need to take into consideration is resolving the issue of availability and determining whether we want to have an harmonized system of our Forex or you want to have multiple systems. And I'll tell you the problem with the airlines. My own understanding, advising investors in the market, you bring in USD, you convert it at what's the official rate to be able to get a CCI. That's right. But what's now an ECCI, a certificate of capital importation. You have to convert it to Naira at the official rate, which is much lesser than what is the actual rate, the market. Now, you now want to take back, because under the relevant laws, you have the right to take back your money and the profit you've made from it. You now want to take it back out, and there's either no USD at the official rate.
Sorry, Mr. Ayodele, we'll definitely, sorry, I want to cut you on the track, but then we will continue from the point that you're already building up, because we're due for another commercial break. We're talking about money, and it's very important that we also make money at the end of the day.
Of course, of course.
Do stay with us here on the Breakfast Show. We'll take a break. I'll be back in no distant time. Thanks for staying with us here on TVC Breakfast. We've been talking about the challenges ahead of the newly nominated Central Bank of Nigeria's governor, that's Yemi Cardoso, who was recently announced by the president, Bola Tinubu, alongside Mohammed Dattijo, Emem Nnan Usoro, Philip Ikeazor, and Bala Bello. I've been speaking with financial experts, Sheson Okwade, as well as a lawyer and policy analyst, Ayodele Oni. Ayodele, you were building on a particular point as regards to some of the challenges Yemi Cardoso will be facing at the CBN. Would you like to wrap
off
on that point?
Yeah, so I think ultimately it's about enforcement of rules. It's about having the right people to enforce the rules. And I think I'd leave it at that.
Tough decisions, you said earlier, that needs to be taken by the new CBN governor. But we are not sure how this is going to be taken. Perfect gentleman. And is it possible that we'll have a CBN governor who can look the president in the eye, especially when it comes to taking drastic decisions? Do you see him as someone who can do that? Because the reason why I'm asking this question was we had the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, who will come out from the president's inner room to say, okay, her and the president have talked about this, we've decided on this, and sometime we'll have the president saying one thing and the governor saying another thing. In this time, in this day and era, I mean, this current administration, do you feel that we might have that perfect synergy between the CBN governor and the president, looking at what they've done in the previous time when the president himself was a governor in Lagos State? Okay,
well, if we use antecedents, yes. Otherwise, I don't have a crystal ball. I think that if the president is appointing you as CBN governor to solve a problem or a set of problems, then he should listen to you and give you the opportunity to solve those problems. Otherwise, then he shouldn't have appointed you. And I do also think, apart from the anomaly we've had in the past, that the central bank governor's position is pretty much protected by the CBN Act, generally speaking. Yeah. So I think because of those situations, it should have some form of freedom to do what he wants to do, to express his views as to how monetary policies should work. I think he should have that laxity. And antecedent seems to suggest that we have a listening president. Then, another advantage I think this current administration does have over the previous is that the president himself isn't financially illiterate. I think he's very financially savvy. And interestingly, I've been in a meeting with him in the past, very recently, at the Villa, and he sounded very pro-market. I was surprised. Asked very brilliant questions and sounded very, very, very pro-market. So I'll be shocked if we see otherwise. I'd be surprised, to be honest. Other than antecedent and that, I can't speak much more to it.
Well, the president had actually, hinted us, in one of the videos that surfaced, recently when it was during the campaign, the electioneering, where he said that we need someone like Yemi Cardoso to do this and that, alongside mentioned Wale Edun and all that. But then the president has one try. Let's talk about the politics of things. Has one tried to appoint him as governor in Lagos State, but then he refused. He was also nominated as vice president before Professor Yemi Osinbajo was settled for. He also refused. But why do you think he took the offer of being the CBN governor, looking at the daunting task in that sector?
Yeah, if you look at the first two, it sounds more political than a core technocrat's work. The work is assuming as CBN governor is more of technocrats than being political. You might say, well, it's one of the political ally to the president, but at the same time, you need someone who has understanding of the business. We've been talking about some of the challenges that has to do with Dr. Yemi in office. I need the president to assist. My learned colleague or learned friend mentioned something of looking at area to reduce the pressure on our foreign exchange. And that takes me to some of the things we've been saying, that how can we have an enabling business environment to domesticate some of the things that we are doing to reduce the pressure that we have on foreign exchange. It plays a major role. In the area of our petroleum product, the president has given a commitment of saying come by December, the Port Harcourt refinery should be functional, I've asked the question, after the exit of the last president, we seems to be silent about a Dangote refinery. It used to be, I know and I read that the government had stake in that refinery. How much are we speaking to it? After the commissioning, we seems not to be hearing anything 3 months later. And we know that around August, we are made to understand that the commercial output, you can imagine if we start producing those things locally, you reduce the pressure on foreign exchange. How much are we speaking to our education in such a way that we can have confidence, in the system in such a way? The government have given one, a loan. We are hearing the issue that the student cannot access that. So when you are not working on policy that would domesticate issue, how many Chinese men want to come out of when you see them come out of their nation to other nations, what they are doing is to come and generate revenue for their country back home. Not that they are going out there to struggle and make things work the way we are doing. So I think government should be intentional about seeing how we can domesticate some of the things. Give room. The president just arrived from G20. He's talking to certain people. And are we working in terms of security to boost the confidence of investors in the nation? We need this. These are areas I feel that we can assist the incoming governor, CBN governor, in the sense that if we continue to put pressure just the way we are by people, continually japa, if you're allowed to use the word, production, it's not happening in the nation, there is nothing the CBN governor will do, because the demand will continually outweigh the supply. And don't forget, we are struggling with the theft in the area of crude oil, which generates revenue for us. So you need to balance those things. Otherwise, a sound gentleman, very intelligent, very vast, you will come in there and you come out and say, I tried my best. And we'll come out and say, your best was not good enough. So it's not about Yemi Cardoso alone. Right. We should hold government, put them on their toes to do certain things that will enhance, the delivery of that particular man by reducing the pressure on foreign exchange. And that's when we domesticate some of the things that we have as a nation.
Yeah, a little earlier we talked about the inflation rate, which has really gone a bit higher than what it was in August 2022. We know that the central bank has a significant influence on inflation through their control of interest rate and money supply. Now that we are looking to a new CBN governor, what are the things that you think it needs to do to ensure that the monetary policies, or what monetary policies do you think it can introduce to first mitigate the impact and then resolve some of these challenges, in real time? Okay.
I guess that's generally a tough question for a lawyer, but I'll try. I think that if you want to encourage people to do business, and to do business, they need to borrow money. You need to work on your interest rate and make it attractive. You need to consider other options to the basic deposit money banks that can provide cheaper funds. Because I say that many businesses in Nigeria struggle to compete with even imported products, because the interest rate is already high. An example, I take a loan from a bank to do business, and I'm going to be paying 28% per annum. In 4 years, I'd have paid ×2. Someone else who is competing with me gets it at 1% from the US or from Canada. I can't compete. So you need to do more around reducing the interest rates. And I know it's not that straightforward. It's not by fiat. You don't say interest rate is going to be something, and it is. I mean, you've got that policy. I think you've got the monetary policy committee that looks at interest rate and all of those. So you just need to determine what your overall monetary policy is, whether you want to be expansionary or contractionary, and whether you want to attract businesses. Because if you want to attract businesses, you want your younger people to be productive, then you need to support them with cheaper funds. You need to ensure that you work around your interest rate. You need to also ensure that the rate at which even government borrows money, the rate in terms of volume of what they are borrowing and the interest too, is something you have to control reasonably. Otherwise, things will continue to go haywire. And also, you need to work, because we keep going back to that same point. You need to work in synergy with the fiscal policy guys who are doing spending and taxation, because then they can work together. Are you going to reduce taxes and have more people in your tax net, or do you want to increase taxes or they remain what they are? And that may even discourage people from doing business. You know, there have been other things the government has done in that regard with respect to having certain presidential orders where you can, for example, build roads and get a tax, net it off your taxation. Those are things you could do, and you could even give them additional tax beyond. If it was 10% they were saving, you give them something additional to make it even attractive. So in my own view as a lawyer, those are some of the things you can do to ensure that rates don't keep going over the roof. And to be fair, it's not only Nigeria that we've had issues around the inflationary trends, to be honest. It's everywhere in the world. If you go everywhere in the world, the war has been part of the problems, and just coming out of COVID too was a challenge. So I think that from a lawyer's perspective and from someone who does transactions, I think those are some of the things you can easily do to ensure that things don't continue to go haywire.
Right. As a lawyer, let me stay with you. You know, we've not exactly confirmed that Emefiele has been removed, or we only know for sure that he was suspended. So would the Senate be acting within the law to confirm Mr. Cardoso? Because we are not exactly sure the fate.
I was hoping you would forget that question and won't ask me. I didn't even know you had it in mind to ask. Okay. So I think I'll go to the CBN Act. I think it's Section 11. There are a number of situations where the CBN governor just has to leave office. One of them is where he's convicted of a crime. Of course, there are then exceptions. If it's a traffic offense, or he's flouted a court order or something whilst performing his duty. The second one, which I think may be related to this, is Section 11 to, I think, paragraph C. Section 11, subsection 2, paragraph C. That speaks to when he's found guilty of a serious misconduct. Now, question is, these allegations, are they proven such that you can say there's serious misconduct? Can you say when he tried to contest to be president and it was shown that he was partisan, he was a member of a particular party, are those serious misconducts? It would appear so. Because if you look at other pieces of legislation, like there's the Bureau of Public Conduct Tribunal Act, there are laws that suggest that he may be guilty of serious misconduct. If he is, then he can be removed. Now, at the president's pleasure, he may remove him. I think it's at the president's pleasure, he may remove him. However, he would require 2/3 of the Senate to do that, or he may have resigned, like we saw, and that's Section 11(3) of the CBN Act. If he resigns, but it has to be 3 months' notice. So I'm not sure. Remember, we do not apply facts to law. We apply the law to the facts. So it will depend on what fact we do have on ground. Serious misconduct, then he's out. If it's a crime, then he has to be convicted by a court. The president can, if the Senate does, 2/3 of the Senate says, we support you in removing him. So for me, those are the circumstances where he would be properly removed. So I don't know what the answer is, because I don't know what the facts are.
We probably will not be spending, much of, of his analysis of the legal aspect to it or not, if we are sure, if it has been stated by the presidency, that same letter that, announced Yemi Cardoso to Nigerians as the newly appointed CBN governor. Whether Emefiele has been suspended. What's your own reading of this?
Yeah, well, as a lawyer, I've spoken to that. That's their area of strength. And, some of us run away from law because of the confusion at times that the law creates. But if you look at some of the section that he has quoted, if there is misconduct, I'm sure by now. And, the president had several advisors that would have guided him on some of the things. So we wait for the better day. But let me speak to something my friend said, and not just, telling our people about the challenges that Cardoso will face. Let's give them some hope. I think the president got it right, and in preparation for Mr. Cardoso, he made some interesting appointments. One is the area of fiscal policy and tax reform. You know, there's a presidential tax force set up, headed by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, and I'm sure you know who Taiwo is as an individual. Not Taiwo alone, a tree does not make a forest. If you look at the crop of people that were actually put into that committee, we've started seeing certain things that they have been advocating for. Area of taxation, he was speaking that, are we going to reduce it? I can tell you, like we all say, that's an area where we play as a member of the Institute of Taxation. We are not charging too high as we speak. The only problem is we keep overburdening the same set of people with the tax and not expanding the tax base. And that's what they're working on currently, the tax force set up by the president on fiscal policy. That's an hope that will enhance, you know, some of the ideas. So as a business owner, you have the fiscal policy on the certain things. Part of the suggestion of the committee that I read from what I was shared was that we want to streamline it. Can we have about 6, 7, 8 taxes that you have understanding of, you know when to pay, you know how much you see it is, so you can plan as a business owner, not having about 63, 73 taxes, and you start getting confused. How can we integrate the local people, you know, local government to state, to the federal government, and harmonize it? So as a business owner, you have a direction to follow, and I see that as a positive way, so that I won't be talking only of the problem. Some of the steps the president has taken ahead to enhance the delivery of the CBN, the incoming CBN governor. If you have those policy, one of the problem business owners are faced with is not even the cost of capital. It's the cost of operation. If you know the taxes individual pays, and not everything goes into the coffers of the government. If you're able to streamline that and make sure that those revenue that are actually being generated, you know, is definite. As a business owner, okay, I know I'm going to pay company income tax at a specific time. I'm going to pay stamp duty. I'm going to pay the. It's 8. So if I'm going to set up a business as an individual, I know what I'm faced with. Not, you know, projecting and you just come up. Somebody is coming with a levy from a particular regulator from this, and you ask yourself, how much of it am I even going to pay? I don't have that. So government has taken the bold step by setting up that police committee to assist, you know, the monetary arm. So you can see if we now have a good handshake, and I love the portfolio handed over to Mr. Wale Edo. So it won't just be Minister of Finance, coordinating economy. That's so Taiwo working on fiscal policy and tax reform, Mr. Cardoso coming from the monetary policy, and Mr. Wale Edo as the intermediary, middleman, you know, coordinating and putting those things together. I feel there is hope for us as a nation if you're able to synergize that well.
I love the aspect of the tax matters that you raised, but you know, when you mention tax to an average Nigerian, they always believe that you're trying to extort them. So how do we make Nigerians understand, you know, the essence of paying tax? Because they say we pay the tax, we don't see the benefits. But when they, you know, the Japaism, they know that they can, but they cannot, but then pay tax. So how do we make Nigerians understand the reason or the essence or the importance of paying, you know, tax, so as to, you know, bridge some of these gaps?
Like I mentioned to my brother and my friend Taiwo, I said, it's a daunting that the president is giving to you, knowing fully well that there is this trust deficit in terms of social contract expected of the government. And he's been an advocate of that, to say there are certain things that is expected of the government if we pay our taxes. And it's part of the things himself and his team are driving. If you want me to, if I'm paying taxes and I'm still going ahead to do basic infrastructure expected of you, what an average businessman does is that when I'm going to shortchange the government, since I've provided what they are supposed to provide, the basic things like water, like electricity, and those things. So, but if you start building the trust by making sure that the deficit in the area of social contract are, you know, being closed, you know, and people are saying, I will always go back to Governor Babatunde Raji Fashola in Lagos. You know, then he will come out and, you know, bring up billboards, taxpayers, you know, working, taxpayers' money working in this area, and you see them constructing the road. We should start engaging government and say, you know, sensitizing people. When I know that there will be electricity 24/7, as a business owner,
I will be committed in paying my taxes because I know I'm not going to spend money on alternative power supply that is, out of rate for me to manage. If I know that there will be good roads provided by the government, why do I need to go ahead and engage people to do those things? So I want to believe that the committee set up, Taiwo is an advocate of that, and I said, if there is anything I'm going to monitor, it's how you engage the government to fulfill the social contract. Right. Because we are fulfilling our obligation to them.
Right, so because of our time, let's quickly address the elephant in the room. And I think there are so many elephants in the room when it comes to monetary issues. One of it is the Naira coloration, even though they call it Naira redesign. So we kept spending, now we are even spending more of the old notes than the colored or redesigned notes. I'm not sure there was any design, just the color. So what do you think the new CBN governor should do as regards this? Because it's like people, when they see the money, or even sometimes when I look at the money, I feel, what exactly is this Naira?
Okay, to be honest, my view is that it was already done. And I feel that there may have been an ulterior motive behind that. I don't know for certain. Because you see that it was done haphazardly. It's not a policy that was well thought through. Because if you thought through that policy well, we would have, this is not the first time we're doing that in this country. And I don't recall,
even though they say it was due.
It's due, generally speaking, because countries do it periodically, but you need to think it through. You need to give them a long period of time. In fact, in some countries, they do not even give you a cut-off period. Once you take it to the bank, it doesn't come out. The honest truth about Nigeria also is that at times when we make policies, we do not work with research. We need, I think, like what they do in Silicon Valley, where they have a university supporting them with research. You don't want to make policies haphazardly. You don't want to make policies without giving a 360-degree thinking. You reach out to people like him. You reach out to lawyers. You get a holistic view. If you do not get a holistic view, this is where we would always find ourselves. So my own view is it's due for a change. I do not know if this coloration is what we should be doing. I can't speak to that. But I think it's due for a change. But what I rather they did was, once that money goes into the bank, it doesn't then come out again. So that's the best way. Yes, you mop it up rather than giving people a cut-off period. I'd rather they took it to the bank, it never then comes out. But I think it's not a bad policy overall to change it. It's always due, and people do it. Countries do it from time to time.
Interesting stuff. I would have loved to take your opinion on this, but then, I'm being, screamed at to bring this to a close. But you guys have actually, made important submissions as regards tasks ahead of the newly appointed Yemi Cardoso as a CBN governor. Thank you very kindly, financial expert Sheson Kwade, as well as a lawyer and policy analyst Ayodele Oni. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us, and have a blessed day.